and welcome back to the AI Marketers Playbook, where we cover actionable frameworks to help you leverage AI and marketing strategies in your business. I'm Audrey Chia, your host, and today I have with me a good friend of mine. We have met each other since day one of our LinkedIn journeys. Jared Bonila, the founder of Job Genie, an AI research and development company focused on really impactful AI solutions. Now, Jared, this big shot right here, has been featured on Forbes 4 times for his work helping top private equity, insurance, and law firms across US, Puerto Rico, and the UK adopt AI. He was also one of the first to build an AI job application agent back in 2021 that could help you apply up to 100 jobs in a single click. Now, Jared, I'm sure there are lots of things we can unpack together in this conversation. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's so great, to be here with you, and thank you for that great introduction. I feel so much cooler than I actually am based on the way that you describe me.
You are cool. All right, tell us more about yourself. So, for listeners who don't know you, how did you first get started in the world of AI? I know you've been in this space for quite some time. Tell us more about that journey.
Yeah, so my journey to AI was very different than, most people. I didn't really come in with the concept of, oh, I want to be an AI or even really technology. So I graduated with a degree from college with a degree in psychology. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it, but I understood that everything in life is really psychology, whether that's business or just, daily conversations. You need to understand how people think, how they behave, and all of that. So I thought for studying, there was something, could really go anywhere. And then when I graduated, obviously, I need to figure out a job with that. And I didn't want to, study for my master's, become a therapist. So my father's a lawyer, and I always spoke to him about like logical things, and we had debates along those lines. So I took the LSAT, which is the law school admissions exam, and I got like 9 points shy of a perfect score, which is very high. And then I kind of before deciding to go to law school, I said, let me pursue or look into a few different job titles or industries that also have logic. And the first, because the LSAT isn't really about law, it's more about understanding logic and logical reasoning. So that was what I really liked about, studying for that. So I found out, that computer programming was all just, knowing logic and building upon logic. So I went to YouTube and just taught myself how to code. And then at that time, coding, was so many different areas. There's like automation, web development, machine learning, and data science. And then I decided that I would pursue machine learning, data science, and AI because I felt at that time, this was in 2018, that I saw that it was the future because well, AI, it's been around for a while and it's always been behind the scenes, but now it's getting better at, helping people perform and helping people learn. And even back then, I think it's so interesting because, like, if you think about chess, is AI has been in chess for a really long time and it's been better than the best humans at chess, but we're still not paying to see an AI versus an AI in chess, right? We're paying to see humans versus humans in chess, or maybe a human versus an AI just to see how good it could potentially be. But people are really using AI to improve the way that they play chess, to improve the way that they learn. So back then, I thought that when I made this observation, I was like, that's going to eventually apply into other jobs because what AI is, it understands patterns, recognition, things like that. So it seemed to be, a potential obvious sign that, there'd be a huge opportunity for it. So I went all in on data science and machine learning in like 2019. And then I started developing a few products and services. And then ChatGPT blew up out of nowhere and it was like perfect because like right place, right time. I'd built a few things with AI and then businesses were like, you already have experience in AI. We need your help with it. So then a lot of people just started reaching out to me in terms of consulting and advising. And that's really what I've been doing. And then been using a lot of the advisory and consulting that I've been doing to identify different ways that people and companies aren't using AI or gaps that they're missing. And then I create them and then, throw them out to the world and see how the world responds.
Wow. See, you used the law brain and applied it somewhere else. And I'm so glad you did that because I think there's a whole world of opportunity. It's really right timing, right, in the AI space. So you
Mm.
spoke a bit about, consulting and building solutions. Can you tell us more about it? Because many of our guests, they specialize in a specific niche, but for yourself, you seem to know a lot. So tell us more about how you usually work with clients. What does that process look like, and how do you even identify a problem that is worth AI solving?
Yeah, so first I'll work at that backwards. So because I think that the second question is probably, in my opinion, one of the most important questions in the whole realm of AI is like what is a problem that is worth AI solving? It is a problem whereas you can define, what is good enough. So it's like if you're a human and you can do a process and you're like, all right, I can do that in X, Y, and Z steps. And then I know that if I follow those steps, the result will be good enough. It's not a level of judgment or etc that goes to it. If I do A, B, and C, I will get to D. Then those are the best processes and ways to use AI because it's predictable, because what AI is, at least generative AI, is a predictive engine. So if A, B, and C works really well and you have that process lined up and mapped out, then you know that you're going to get D. But where people get a little bit off topic with it, and I wouldn't say off topic, but where they get lost and where the results don't really show is when they do it for things. And with that being said, but before I really get into it, it doesn't mean it's bad for it. It just means it's harder to measure, and that's where I help really where I focus on is for like content creation is one aspect, right? And like content creation, you and I both know like AI is great for copywriting, it's great for for creating content, but the caveat with that and the little thing that makes it harder to measure, it's like just because a post looks great in terms of LinkedIn format doesn't mean it's going to get a lot of user engagement, and then just because it gets a lot of engagement doesn't mean it's going to convert. So is with that being said, and to bring it all together is there also needs to be like a clear metric that you're trying to reach. So that's why I say is like by understanding that process is a good way to understand it, because if you don't know what you're looking for, then it's hard to expect AI to do it. And then now, I know that answered one of your questions. So I don't know if you want to go
Yeah.
back and tie in the original one.
Yeah, no, but what I love about what you said was
Mhm.
just because AI can create something doesn't mean that that something is going to work and get you the results, right? So there are actually so many layers, right? Just because you build a process and you get certain output out doesn't mean that the output is good enough to get you the actual results that you want. And maybe
Mhm.
for a business that's just starting out, how do you even get started? Because technically you can apply AI to everything. So
Mhm.
how do you prioritize that business
Uh-huh.
outcome? What does that look like for a business owner?
Yeah, yeah. So that's, in my opinion, the most important step, and the step that's also been missed the most. So I don't know if you've seen, there's been a lot of news lately on how a lot of AI pilots and projects are failing from, 80 to 95% of them. And a lot of it is because exactly what you said is you can apply AI everywhere. So for me, and that's what I do in terms, back to what you said, you're asking in terms of the consulting and advising. What clients typically ask me for and what they look for me, opposed to, other people who have niches like yourself, like in marketing or AI for sales or lead generation along those lines. What I really focus on with my advisory and consulting is prioritization and road mapping. So, there's a lot of people where it's like AI's everywhere. Where could I do it? But like I need to make sure that like I'm investing AI because and like I work with companies that have investors. So a lot of the decisions and investments they make, they need to go back to a board and say, we're going to invest in AI because we believe that it will increase our leads by this, it will increase our sales conversions, whatever that might be. So you need to be able to understand what that is and how to get there. So where I always start with clients is by breaking down the current processes and different workflows that they already have, right? Because if you try to throw AI in to create something new, you're essentially it's just a hypothesis. You have an idea that it's going to work. You're going to build something and then you're going to hope for the best. So that's hard to measure. But if you start by really doing like a breakdown and audit of everything different people do in your business. So as if you have a marketing department, right? They're creating content. How much time are they spending researching content? How much time are they spending drafting content? How much time are they spending what's it called, publishing content, repurposing content to different platforms? So the different steps and time that they're taking with those, and then you use that to see where AI can fit in best and improve it, because there's different steps where it can help, there's different steps where it could do the whole thing, and then there's certain steps where you need the human judgment, for being that this is the marketer's playbook. I thought that was a really good example because for from your experience, you can use AI to like really save time with the research, right? It's like that's in my opinion one of the best ways. So now you get the research, all you got to do is double check it, make sure it didn't hallucinate, didn't lie to you. Now that saved you time where years ago you'd have to spend hours breaking down viral posts, what made this post go viral, all of that. But now you have AI do that. Then now you see like, okay, maybe I'm good at writing. Then you use AI to draft it, etc. So by breaking down all of the different steps, and that's just marketing, but like you do that across operations, you do that across sales, you do it across all of the different communications, everything that applies to your business and department. And then you see, where can I, if I use AI here, what will be the time saved on it? What will be the money saved on it? And that's where I think, not a lot of people are going, right? Because they're also thinking about like, how can we replace people
Yeah.
opposed to how can we amplify people? And if you think about the way that I just explained it, it's about amplifying people, right? It's like, okay, I spend X amount of time doing this. How can I use AI to save a little bit of time on that?
Definitely. I think you covered so many great points, right? Being able to use AI as an enabler, not as a way to replace your current kind of team. That is something that businesses should think about. I think there's also the element of even if AI can do it, sometimes you still need that human in the loop to make sure that quality of the content is what you're looking for. So just because AI can create a blog, a newsletter, a social post, doesn't mean that it has the strategy behind creating that copy that converts. And I'm sure that also applies to so many aspects of businesses,
So many. Yeah,
right?
very, very well said. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so curious to know, Jared, because you also talk about, using AI in different use cases. What are some of the more mind-boggling kind of or exciting endeavors that you've been working on that are pushing the limits of what's possible right now?
Exciting. So one of the things where it's interesting because I consider myself more of a boring AI user than an exciting AI person. When I got into AI, I was very big about trying to do something that nobody's done, trying to do something super exciting. So as you said in my introduction, in 2021, I created an AI agent that found jobs on LinkedIn that were 85% relevant to your resume, filled out the job applications for you, and clicked submit. So it's like if I was applying for a job and we were having this podcast, it'd be applying to those jobs. So that was one of those things. And again, 2021, this was before ChatGPT came out. So this was one of those where it was, exciting. It was pushing the limits, all of that. But it didn't have the impact that I wanted it to have, because what happened was is people started using it, but then people started getting rejected by a lot of jobs at the same time. Because one of the things that I think everybody needs to think about when thinking about AI and applying AI is what is the real problem. And like a lot of the times is there's a problem, beneath the problem. So with, what I created is the problem most people have with finding a job isn't necessarily that they haven't applied to enough jobs. It might be, that their resume isn't good enough, that their LinkedIn profile isn't good enough, that their experience isn't, just up to par. So it doesn't matter if you apply, if you don't have good experience, you don't have a good resume, you don't have a good LinkedIn profile, it doesn't matter if you apply to 100 jobs, 1,000 jobs, you're not going to do well. So, or you might not, you might do well, you might not, you might get lucky, but at the end of the day, it's like there's a problem beneath that, right? So as you apply to all these jobs, you're getting denied. Now okay, what's the problem beneath that? My resume is not good. What's the problem beneath that? My skills aren't that good. What's the problem beneath that? So it's understanding all of that is what I've realized is really the lifeblood of AI success. Because there, like you said, is there's so many exciting ways to use AI, so many things, capabilities that can be done with it. But I work with businesses and I work on a consulting and advisory basis. So it's like when they hire me, they're not hiring me, to have something exciting where it's like, oh,
Yes.
this is cool, we get a few views, but it doesn't, turn into dollars. It doesn't turn into engagement. It doesn't turn into whatever metric they're looking. So that's why I'm very again, I wouldn't say against, but more on the lines of really looking for not the, I wouldn't say the boring ways, but the ways but the predictable ways towards using AI towards for success.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I think for me, what I've seen is, for example, people could be building out workflows where you can just instantly generate an ad, right? Like it generates the copy, the visuals, and maybe even sound effects for you. However, then my question is, do the ads actually convert? So if you actually put that to the test, right? Does it really work? Do people buy it? Is it too AI for most people's liking? Those are some questions that I think brands also need to ask themselves, right? Not using AI for the sake of it, but like what you said, going back to the matrix, the ROI, does it
Hmm.
make sense for a business? And maybe that's something to think about. Now, Jared, you're also, for example, fractional lead, I guess, in many teams, right? As a chief AI officer, can you tell us more about what you think that future of teams are going to look like? Do you think it's going to be a
Uh-huh.
hybrid thing? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that's something where I think it's definitely changing a lot because like I got hired, like I had a lot of fractional chief AI officer jobs like when that first started off, but now I would consider my work more like AI operations, like head of AI operations or things like that because more of the work is along the lines of like how can you plug in these different AI tools, these different processes within, the company's organization, the teams, the workflows, and all of that, opposed to, needing to be like this chief officer, having the C-suite type thing. It's more of, just a way of, guiding different people. And that's why I think what's going to happen, especially as these tools are becoming a lot more easy to use and like across, positions. So, they're using it, for marketing, sales, communication, literally everything that you can think of. And they're taking away a lot of the technical know-how and like even the prompting know-how. I'm sure you've seen over the past few years even prompting has become easier. Like you can go to you can take like a prompt and go to Claude and say write this prompt as 20 times better, and if you really put the time in to write a good prompt with that, it can make an amazing world-class high quality prompt, and now you have a much better prompt for the result that you're looking for. So that's why I think the transition that we're gonna see, and we've started to see it, and I've seen it in the teams that are succeeding the most with AI is what I'm calling, and I think you've actually had somebody on your podcast talk about it in a similar context, like AI generalist, where they're not people who necessarily specialize in anything with AI, but they understand the AI, they understand a few of the different tools and the capabilities and how they connect to different tools and then how to use them, for their jobs, right? So like one of the things where I think it's going to change, like I think everybody's really going to be full stack to an extent. Like right now, full stack, or up until this point, full stack has been like developer. So a full stack developer is someone front end and back end. But now I think we're going to have like more full stack workers where you're going to have people be able to do things across different domains that make it easier for them to ship, make it easier for them, to test products and different things along those lines. And I think a really good example and a company that's doing it really well is like Gamma. If you check out Gamma, and I know their CEO posted about it a while ago, and like what they have is like now you can use Claude, ChatGPT, all of these things for your sales or marketing team to do data analytics, so that now you don't have to wait for an analyst to analyze this data, send it to your marketing person, then they need to convert that and understand how that applies to your demographic. Now you could have the marketing person that understands your audience, and they're doing the analysis too, because they don't need to know all of these different Python codes, data analysis methods. You can use Claude or ChatGPT. Hey, act like an expert data analysis. Show me the patterns among my client reviews, and then from there, you as the marketer could use that to generate blog posts, generate different content. And again, the same thing with sales. In sales now you have what's it called? These meeting recorders. So now you have a meeting recorder, that analyze it. Then you could take that recording, throw that into ChatGPT, and use it, to better understand, better create, a new offer, and then prototype different things because we have Cursor, Lovable, all of these, coding platforms. So it's like it's enabling teams to do a lot more with less, because a lot of times, especially like in technology companies, we'd have to wait for other people to get things done to do the next steps. So if you have a marketing campaign, you have to wait till you get the analytics back before you do the next thing. And then same thing with a lot of different stuff. But now with all of the advances in AI, if you have an idea, you can push it and say like, all right, here's a test that we're throwing out. I think the most important aspect of it is the cost savings, because if you can test a lot of full marketing campaigns, you could test full product prototypes in the matter of days and weeks. where it's for, dollars and pennies, where like, what, $20 a month with, a lovable subscription. Now you have a full clickable thing to see if that's something your audience would engage with. And if it is, now, then back to the ROI, right? Is, you can build this with Lovable, see if it's something, your clients will engage with, they'll pay for. If they hate it, if they don't use it, you don't invest in it. You all you did was put something together in Lovable within an hour. And if they do, now okay, like this is worth investing it to turn into like a production ready app.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you're bridging all the different apps or tools together and finding solutions because it's almost like you have a puzzle piece, right? Now you're like figuring out, okay, maybe I need an AI note taker, then I need to put it to ChatGPT, then after that Gamma, and then you string like a whole flow of events. I,
Exactly.
I think it's beautiful because it's actually a very creative way of looking at AI. But what I found is I think most people just see the tools in silo. So, for example, let's say Gemini has Nano Banana's new kind of visual creation features, right? Most people would just use it as is, but then they don't take a step back and think, okay, can I use this for ads? But to use this for ads, you then need to take a step back and think, how do I develop the ad copy? And then you need the audience insights, which then goes back to your customer interviews. So
Hmm.
I think most people are only looking at tools just as is instead of full workflows. What do you think? Have you observed that? Do you think it's something that you've also seen?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I said, and how I do, my work is, we start off like, I don't start off with any tools. Not like, hey, go check out ChatGPT, let's do a training. It's, let's break down your workflows. Let's understand, what people are doing, how much time they're spending on them, per week, per day, per month, per year, where the opportunity for AI is, how we can connect, those different pieces, not in silos, but in workflows, so you can have like an actual process that creates results, opposed to you're going, here's ChatGPT, here's Gemini, here's this next one. And then, because at that point, a lot of times, it might not even save you time, it just might be a longer thing. So that's why I think it's so important, for people really to understand AI as what it is. It is just something to amplify, or, fill in a gap that you can identify. If you can't identify the gap or where it can amplify somebody, you're really, just taking a guess that, like, hopefully this will work.
Yes. I think it would be interesting for us also to share with our listeners. A lot of them are founders, business owners.
Mhm.
Perhaps three use cases that you have seen that are a bit more specific in nature. Because a lot of our listeners, they have dabbled a little bit into AI. Maybe they have tried using certain tools in their workflows, but many of them are still not too sure about what does an AI-enabled team look like. So perhaps there are a couple of use cases that you think would be relevant to most people out there. How
Mhm.
Where do they get started? Like, what are perhaps three use cases you can think of?
Yeah, so I would say a few good use cases that I think is like really common and has a almost immediate, and like the first one I'm gonna say has an immediate ROI is onboarding. So whether that's like new client onboarding or employee onboarding, if you understand that process and you can break it down through AI, you will immediately get a ROI on your time. Because if you think about it, right, is if you right now, if you hire somebody, right, you probably, if you don't have this process, automated using AI, you'd have to, send them some, like, oh, you hired them, boom, now you send them this. Then once they get back to you on that, now you send them another thing. Then you have to ask them these questions. And that, as somebody, and CEOs, founders, our most valuable, what's it called, resource is our time. So, when we're starting off, those are things, we might not necessarily need to spend as much time. So if you have an AI, go through that process, and there's so many different ways that you can do that. You can do that with a make.com, N8N, or even, just a Google extension like Scribed or something like that, where, they have these different things. And then people get back to you only when they have a question that the AI doesn't answer. Because you could also even do it, with a GPT or a chatbot. Is There's so many different ways, but that's a way where now you're immediately getting your time back, because that's, maybe an hour, maybe 3 days, depending on how extensive your onboarding is. Because bigger companies, sometimes the onboarding could be, a week of time. And, there's a lot of training and things involved in that. But now with AI, is you can speed that up, where the people only need to get back to you and ask you, when the AI doesn't know that. And then as you do it more, you improve, what the AI doesn't know. So, you started off with the first employee. And then now it's like, okay, this employee, based on the AI process and the feedback the employee had, the AI didn't know how to answer X, Y, and Z. So that's, the gaps that we need to fill it in. So over time, it learns more. And then again, it gives you more time back on, your onboarding process and things along those lines. So that's one of the ones. And again, where I say back to what we were saying prior, it's not sexy. It's not exciting. It's like, it's like, and it was something so funny because it was like very early because that was one of probably the most common use cases I've seen that has an ROI that again most companies can do it because they usually have an onboarding process. And I had a VC that asked me, and like this was early on, right, ChatGPT days, and they were like, what's the most common one? And I said that, and they were like, you could tell they were a little bit disappointed because they
Oh
wanted it to be
no.
they wanted it to be like, oh, this lead generation, you create AI, it's gonna go find your perfect customer, create an email, do
Yeah,
this
yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
turn you into $1 million company overnight. I'm like, no, it's just gonna save you time onboarding, but you're gonna get at least 10 hours back, a month every time that you're doing that. So that's one of the ones. And then I do think, in my personal opinion, I think using it to understand sales calls and people better is so important and unutilized. And I mean, a lot of people are utilizing, the meeting recordings, like, you'll have like a Sybil, a Fathom, or whatever. But I think, if you take those and you go from it so much more, like after you get a bunch of them, you use that to like really do data analysis. And that's where, our prior conversation came in, the generalism with it. It's like, okay, we've had 10 sales calls this week. We haven't converted one. Let's take every single transcript that we have and start breaking down patterns, start understanding things. Because now, you can genuinely start understanding things that, we can't see, that might, go past us. So I think that is such an amazing way that people can use it, that they are using it, but I don't think, to the full extent. And then on a similar front to that is with customer reviews and testimonials. There's so much that you can do on that front, from creating dashboards to like really break down, your feedback, negative, positive, the different areas to improve, different people to get back to. Like, you can create a very, quick and efficient dashboard just based on a Google sheet. And back to what we were saying earlier again, is these are things where years ago that would have took months, it would have took a whole budget, but now you can just take your, reviews, throw them into Lovable Bolt or one of those things, take out the personally identifying information for security purposes, but then you throw it in, and then now you understand your customer reviews better. And then, now you can use that again to build potential prototypes, to build marketing campaigns, to build all things along those lines. So that's where, again, it could create an actual ROI, because this is information that you're having. These are calls, back to the sales one, those are calls that you're on. So now you're using information and time that you already have, and then you're using the technology to extract insights to, make more informed decisions. And I want to, really make it clear that what I said, that all of the use cases that I said weren't decision making use cases, right? Is they're informational use cases. You're retrieving information, you're understanding patterns. You're not using AI to help you decide things, because as humans, we should still be the ones, making the decision. We have AI to help us identify patterns, to help us retrieve information, but we are the people, we're the decision makers, we have the experience, so it's on us to be able to take that information and use that information to make more informed decisions.
Yeah, and I think like what you said isn't always about that shiny new object. Sometimes it's just going back to the foundations, right? And then seeing, okay, what can I do that helps to make, move the needle in certain
Mm-hmm.
spaces? Unsexy, but lots of ROI. To your second point on using sales calls, what I found is I use Sybil, and what I do is I then export all the kinds of like chats, and I can even in Sybil itself ask it for a common target audience, pain points, etc. And then what I like to do is turn those pain points into LinkedIn content. So I built a second GPT that is trained on sales objection handling, and then I use that to create content that helps me with objection handling through content. So that's really two like quick wins, in one simple
Absolutely.
workflow.
See, and exactly, and that's a perfect, example of how to take, one of the aspects of the AI and, the information insight that you're gaining, and then using it to help make a decision on the other end. Because even though, I'm sure, you're not just taking it like, for face value, you're still, all right, this makes sense. They were right on this. It didn't hallucinate, but you're using it to help you, understand and speed up your process. Because if you didn't have AI for it, you'd be analyzing things, doing research, trying to find the pain points, create the content, and that would take a lot more time. But now you're able to identify, where that time is, and a lot of the time is in, the research, the looking for the pain points, extracting those patterns, and now you don't have to do that.
Yes. And I think one interesting thing to also consider is perhaps we've talked so much about all the benefits and perks about using AI, but I'm sure there are certain challenges that businesses face or certain concerns that they might have. So, what have you noticed so far in terms of challenges, concerns, or potential drawbacks?
So many. I'm like, where do I start with this? Because I think it is so much easier to fail with AI than it is to succeed with it. And based on, the numbers and studies that we're seeing, it's like that's what's happening. And I think a lot of it is because of, really the shiny object syndrome with it. And and the fact that, it is really cool, it's really exciting, and that there are aspects and ways that people are using it where they're having wild, crazy results, and everybody wants that same result, right? So it's like if you have people who have like, they'll use, Nano Banana to create, a viral video, and it'll get 20 million views. And, and a perfect example of one, like I didn't even mean for this to be example, it just came to my mind, is there was somebody who did like a liquid death commercial using Nano Banana, and it was so insane. It was so nuts, and like very, very, very good and well done. But that was like one example of the many hundreds of examples where people are trying where, it sucks and it's awful and nobody wants to watch it. So, you see all of these things that are exciting, and it's like that's exciting, like there. And I wish that that like I had it ready so I could like share it, because it was really, appropriate for Liquid Death, for their position, because, they did just this absolutely outrageous commercial, and that's what Liquid Death's brand is all about. It's like, doing things that
Yes.
are just crazy. And they use Nano Banana to do, just put together crazy clips and ridiculous things. So for that use case, it made sense. But, for the average business, that is a coffee shop down the street, like them using, an AI or video generator to create their
Yes.
content, it's not going to hit people the same way. So where I see, a lot of people and companies going wrong is they're trying to do something that is so big, so extravagant, and then they put so much time, they put so much money into it, and then it doesn't turn out. And a lot of it, and one of the things where I think, and that leads to my second point, is I
Yes.
think the biggest, and I think this potentially is even bigger, is now we have no excuse anymore not to do things that are data driven, because we have endless data. We can extract the data that we don't have. We can do research. So is everything that you are doing within your business, all of the bets you're making, the pilots that you're doing, is they should be based on what your customers are talking about, their real pain points and stuff, you can, where you can identify it. And now again, you can put it in a dashboard and be like, I am building this because 100 people, have said that this is their problem. Where
Yes.
and where that ties into the last point of why I think it's the biggest problem. And I see this a lot with founders, like companies who are starting off, and I've worked with a handful of these where they see this new technology, like I'm going to build this new cool AI product, and they won't talk to anybody about it. They'll think it's the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever, and then they'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars developing, the like this advanced thing, and then they put it out into the world, and nobody wanted it, or they wanted something simpler, and then now, you got to backtrack. But the reality is, like, most founders, and this is something like different topic but on the same topic, is most founders love their idea more than they love their audience's solution, or, the need to solve their audience's problem. So they'll create this product because they think it will help the audience, but then when it doesn't help the audience, they'll still try to shove the product down. They'll be like, no, I'm just going to tweak it a little bit, I'm just going to do this, I'm just going to do that. But at the end of the day, is they didn't want that. It's like that's not what's helping. So it's like with AI right now, with the the amount of data information available, especially like we're all on social media, we're all talking. Like I
Yeah.
think TikTok, in my opinion, is the best place to find information because TikTok is different than LinkedIn, where like people would just go to TikTok and vent about everything. And I am a big advocate of doom scrolling at least an hour a day on TikTok within your niche just to hear about what people are talking about, hear about their complaints, hear about, the actual news, see these things. Because the difference between TikTok and LinkedIn is LinkedIn's a professional platform. We're all
Yeah.
trying to go there and, look like our best self, express all of the good that we have, all of the knowledge that we have. We're not talking about our doubts. And like obviously you and I both know, talking about your failures and things like that is good for LinkedIn. But most people, do it in a way where it's also self-serving, where it's like, hey, I failed this, but that failure made me so successful. Where in TikTok, people are just vulnerable, where they'll go there and they'll be like, I'm really worried that AI is, going to take my job because I'm spending, this amount of time writing, and AI could already write better than me. So now, you go there and you're starting to learn, what people are actually talking about. So, with TikTok, and you could then again with these tools, you can scrape TikToks. You can analyze hundreds of thousands of video scripts in the matter of a day, and then now you have information to make decisions. So that's why I think the biggest thing that people are going wrong is not finding and listening to data to make decisions, to make moves, because there's so much available and we have the tools to do it now. So, everybody should be making informed data driven decisions opposed to, oh, this is what I think will work. And then and then my third one that I'll say is I think not realizing how much the times have changed.
Yeah.
So, because the truth of the matter is now too that attention is different.
Yes.
Just putting out content doesn't do it anymore. You really need to be able to grab mind share to get people to notice you and do all of that. And so like the typical ways to build a business aren't working the same. Like in the past year or two, I've worked with a few founders who have came from wildly successful companies. So like they've exited to billion-dollar companies that I can't even say because of NDAs, but like for nine figures. And then but in like the 2010s and like up to 2020, a lot of SaaS and technology companies is they were built off of sales, right? You get people, you're making sales calls, you're doing outreach, cold outreach, emails, all of these different things. But now that game doesn't work the same way it does. People aren't picking up the calls the same way that they were. People aren't answering emails the same way that they were. People are looking, for trust. So it's like, if you send me an email saying like, hey, I could help out your business, and then and I'm gonna look at your LinkedIn, and if you don't have anything on LinkedIn, I'm saying I don't know who you are. I'm gonna find somebody who does, and then and that's something a lot of companies are under. Estimating the power of branding right now, because
Yeah.
as somebody like I've been in AI since before AI was popular, and I genuinely believe with all of my heart that in the next year, and I think already right now, branding is going to be more important than AI, because like I said earlier with the generalist content conversation, is that people are going to, these tools are getting so much better and so much easier to use that 3 years from now it's not going to be hard to use, right? Everybody's going to have an AI agent that could help them do everything. But so what's going to help you stand out? What's going to help you stand out is your brand. It's going to be how can you get people's attention? How can you get people, to want to support you, to want to follow you? And when I say follow, I don't mean like click to follow and like see, like genuinely follow you, like, see what you're doing every day, see what new features are coming out, see these things, create that level of brand resonance where it's like, people are there. If you think about, the best companies of all time have been companies where they really have a strong brand identity, right? So like
Yeah.
Nike's a perfect example. People wait, for Nike ads and
Yes.
different things along the, I mean, Nike releases and different stuff like that. So it's like by creating a brand where people could become a part of the brand, right? It's not I'm using your brand, your company for the product. I want to be a part of your brand because, you have you share the same values I share, and at the same time you have the solutions that I share. And then, that's how you create, not only you solve their problem, but you create like brand loyalty around that too.
Yeah, so many great points that you shared there. I think the last point that you mentioned about brand building, I feel very strongly about it. As you can tell, there is already a whole wave of AI content. There are so many blog articles, so
Mhm.
many pieces of, stuff going around, right? So then how does any company stand out, right? Which is why, like, as much as I love AI, I always go back to what I do best, content strategy and branding, because that part is inherently human. And at the end of the day, you want to buy from someone that, like what you said, Jared, being able to, you emotionally resonate with, you align with on a values basis, you enjoy their visual perspective. So all of these human traits are going to be also important in the world of
Mhm.
AI. And you will see that in the next few years. I think right now it's still a race where people are still trying to catch up. But I think when AI plateaus, right, and everyone's around the same kind of range, that's when the brands with good storytelling are going to stand out.
Absolutely, and that's why I think right now is the time to focus on that because that's what's going to happen is everybody's going to level out, then everybody's going to be, oh, damn, how do we get our brand storytelling right? How do we do it right? Where, in my opinion, is the goal, should we do that now? Because nobody's focusing on, most of the businesses. And like, I'm telling businesses this too. And when I tell you, and like, I work with AI and obviously I do consulting with it, but a lot of what I'm doing is like, I'm consulting based on, patterns and information and research and things that, I've seen. So I'm trying to lean companies more towards that. And Audrey, I'll tell you, a lot of companies are like, nah, it's not worth it yet. We'll get to it later. And again, all I can do is give them the data and give them a potential roadmap with it. But it's on them to make the decision. But a lot of companies are at that point where it's like, brand doesn't worry. We need to figure out AI now. And
Yes.
then and again, brand is where you get the people to pay attention to you. And I think there are so many companies that do this really really well right now. And I think a really, 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 really good example, that's why I said really so many times, is Lovable. And because Lovable, in my opinion, and I've used all of the AI coding editors, generators, all of those things. Lovable is not even in the top three, in my opinion. Not even in the top three. But it has the best brand out of them all.
Yes, it
And
does.
and because of that, they're the fastest company ever to 100 million. They're doing so well. They have a community that shares, content for them. They've understood that, so they don't need to be the best product. They have the best brand, and then based on the best brand, it does everything for them. So they understood, prior, and that's what I think a lot. I'm trying to like lean a lot of companies towards, like this AI stuff. Yeah, it's important, but if you're smart, you'll figure that out. It's like all you need is, the roadmap, the understanding of where to use it for ROI, understanding the areas where, it's just potentially a distraction, and then using that, to amplify how you reach your audience, how you speak to your audience. That's why back to what we were saying is, using it to understand sales calls and reviews or things like that is so important because that gives you a better understanding of your audience. And the better you understand your audience and you can talk to them, the better that they could relate to you. Is like if they feel you really get their problems, they're going to want to, be with somebody, work with somebody who has that, opposed to, I'm just creating products. I think that, that's what's going to help you.
Yes. So I think in the increasingly AI first world, being human at our core still matters. And I think that's what's gonna get you that brand loyalty and
Absolutely,
community.
absolutely, and I'm kind of like I consider myself a contrarian a bit in the AI world because like I don't like the term AI first at all. I actually hate it. I think AI native is much better because I think if AI first makes people feel like human second, and that's my opinion because the reason I say that is because if you think about like if you have heard what happened with Duolingo is like we're going AI first, and then people started deleting it. They started taking social media and attacking it and all of that, and it was because the way that they messaged it was we're putting AI in front of our people. And if we're putting AI in front of our people, then how much do we really value our people? And if we don't value the people that are building our product, then how much do we value our customer? And that's where the psychology and everything comes into it. Is you need to understand who is your audience. Do they want you to be AI first? Because if you really take the time to listen to most people right now, they're not the biggest fans of AI. It's like the world, us. We as operators, marketers, brand experts, we like AI because it helps us do our job better. But if it doesn't help you do your job better and it's not obvious, you don't like it. There's not it's like one of those things where you're worried it's going to replace jobs. You're worried, it's lying, it's doing all of these things. You're worried it's bad for the environment. That's a whole different conversation. But what is, there's so many different things where the world isn't AI. The world doesn't want to be AI first. The world wants to be AI native. They want to have AI to help them with things. Because even the people that complain about AI and they hate on it for certain things, they're using ChatGPT, when they need a recipe. You know what I'm saying? So so
That
so,
is
so
very true.
so that's the thing. It's like and that's why I think the psychology and understanding the people behind it is so important because people want AI. They even
Yes.
if they don't say it, they want it because what people want is people want better solutions for everything. There's like they don't want to have to spend an hour on Google looking to find out like is my dog going to be sick based on what he ate. I want to type into ChatGPT and get a full breakdown on when do I need to bring him to the vet, right? If I need to bring him to the vet. So it's like that's the behavioral aspect behind it. But at the end of the day, like I don't want AI in my face at everything, and I love AI. This is what I've done. This is my career. But like throwing it down people's first with the AI first, and throwing it down people's throat. I mean, with the AI first, I think that is a direction where, and I even know people that like I look up to in the AI space that are big on the AI first, and I disagree with them with it because again, that's the thing. It's about the
Yes.
people too. We really have to think about how they're reacting to it.
Yeah, I think this was such a beautiful and enriching discussion where we blend both, psychology, copywriting, marketing, and of course AI into the picture. I'm
Mhm.
sure our listeners have gained a lot as much as I have. So thank you so much, Jared, for sharing your insights. Where can our listeners find you and who should reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I also just started a TikTok because, like I said, I think TikTok is such a good aspect for personal branding that I'm experimenting with it, and I would recommend any and every founder that's watching it do the same thing if you are like you or you like getting behind a camera and talking just because one, it's a lot more authentic and the algorithm is better in terms of reach. So one, you can find me on TikTok. The name is Progressively Failing. So
Love
I
that.
like to let people know that failure is okay. And then on LinkedIn, Jared Bonilla, my name. And right now, I'm really working just with VCs and private equity companies or companies, anyone that has a portfolio, because as I've told you, I do a lot of like AI road mapping and prioritization. So what I've been doing is helping investors understand how they could, provide that value to their portfolio companies. So it's instead of, just hitting one company, helping investors hit all of their companies so that they, get a better ROI on their investments. So,
Yes.
but I also do, being that, my work is, for VCs to do work with companies. I do work with founders and, CEOs as well, but right now I'm mostly focused on investors.
Awesome. And we will link all of your socials on our podcast. Thank you, Gerard, for being here. And
Thank
thank
you
you,
so much for having me.
listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the bell and stay tuned for next week's episode of the AI Marketers Playbook. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me, Audrey.